collaboration is critical to any enterprise and to any work effort now. But as there's more and more information coming down towards me, I'm drowning in too much information, and all the chatter gets to a point where it's not just a distraction, but actually reduces productivity. I already see people who say they cannot do any work because there's too many disruptions, and if they actually want to get work done, they have to call in sick or stay at home or lock themselves somewhere. How do you deal with that?
Well, okay, let me just first start by saying that we're not going to be the magic bullet there. I think people get a lot more access to information and take in a lot more for the same amount of time invested in Slack, but we are actively working on ways to help people manage notifications. So here's an example of that. There's an interesting dynamic where people, if you mention someone's name, they'll get a notification. At least that's the default. You can turn that off. And sometimes I would think of something at 12:30 in the morning. And I would want to ask someone a question, send them a message, or mention their name so that they see the notification, but I don't want to wake them up, and they might be on the verge of falling asleep, and I don't want to cause a notification then. So people would either deliberately misspell names or not cause the mention function to work, or they would just like make a note to themselves to remember to send the message the next day. So we enabled Do Not Disturb mode on every single user's Slack from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. in their local time zone as a start. And we told administrators that we were doing this a week in advance. And we said you can set your own hours and individuals can override it and all that kind of stuff. But there's definitely a deep, I mean, maybe this is the byproduct of having a lot of millennial aged workers at our company, but there's a deep recognition of that as a problem and search for means to address it. But the other thing, we're investing heavily in machine learning and AI approaches to automatic summarization of that kind of information, which so I'm telling you that we're doing that, and I'm the CEO, and I'm still quite skeptical about our ability to pull it off. I think it's a long-term, multi-decade project to get really good at that. But one thing I would say that is an advantage to Slack over other systems, in the same way that Google does a great job of web search, and those of you who remember the Google search appliance for inside companies, it was terrible, right? And it's not because the engineers were stupid or something like that. It's that in the case of the public web, you have the signal of billions of people using it hundreds of times and making decisions and being able to feed that into the loop of how you design the algorithms. And you also have the whole web pointing to itself. You don't have any of that inside. So it's not quite the same scale, but by centralizing communication and moving it out of individual inboxes and into channels and making it much more open and making the default measure of communication inside an organization public, we get a huge advantage over individual scattered inboxes in our ability to analyze and make use of that information. And that's something that